the same time, my daughter's 17 now, so she's basically an adult. So we
Yeah.
converse with directly with her. But they were never going to be friends. Just different personalities, different people in general. Like in a perfect world, that would be ideal because it would mean that everyone's getting along and there's no conflict. But yeah, it didn't end up that way at all.
I hate when it's those type of situations, but it just goes to show that there's still a lack of maturity, to where you can't get along, and I look at it like this: when the relationship between the two parents, when there's kids involved, at the end of the day, you got to put your pride to the side and do what's best for the children. Now, if
Yep.
you want to have an argument off to the side, outside, away from the kids, that's fine, but
Yep.
don't put the kids in the middle of it because they have absolutely nothing to do with it. You know, the angry dads are sometimes bitter too. Men are bitter and women are usually a lot bitter because they don't want to admit that they played a major part in the downfall of the relationship.
Mm.
There's a lot of women that just want to blame the man but never take any accountability for their own actions. And when I look at it like this, when the woman doesn't want to take accountability for her actions, it just means that it's easy for her to place the blame than accept accountability. And it's like, okay, but he didn't do this by himself.
Mm.
You did something that made him leave, but you won't admit to what you did. So you blame him completely. You have to take that mirror and turn it back on yourself and say, okay, I did this.
Yep.
And if you're able to do that, that is where your growth is always going to begin. But it starts with accountability and not denial. But some people like to live on denial street forever. I'm
They
just
do.
not one of them people. You know, you can't heal from what you don't acknowledge, and if you want a wound to heal, you gotta have to recognize that it's there and then
Mhm.
start taking the steps to heal from that. What advice would you give to someone that is in the middle of like uncertainty of staying or leaving,
Mhm.
because it seems more painful to stay in a situation than it is to leave, but it would be better if you were to leave, for the sake of mental safety, physical safety, just clarity all the way around. What advice would you give?
That's a good question. It's very dependent on the on case by case. For
Mhm.
me, I tried to stay. Like we went and saw marriage counselling. Obviously we had a daughter, so that was a big reason. But I
Yeah.
ended up having to make the tough call to leave because it was too toxic and it just became too untenable to stay there. So I think just getting all your cards on the table, having some hard conversations are definitely worthwhile. This is where I'm at. This is what I think. Sometimes that can be to the benefit of the relationship, and sometimes it can be at the detriment. But it's got to be done. Otherwise, you're just avoiding what is potentially going to happen anyway,
Right.
and a potentially nastier sort of situation. So at least with honesty, you can get to the root of the problem straight away, and then make some decisions around that. I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because it's gonna be a hard conversation, and nobody really likes to have those hard conversations. But the hard conversations are necessary to get you to say, okay, we tried to make this work, and maybe we're better as friends than we are being in a relationship together. And
Yep.
sometimes that is where we need to understand that it doesn't mean that neither one of us are bad people. It just means that we're not good together. And we
That's
have to figure out how to coexist, especially for the sake of the child if there are children involved. And it's okay if you're not together to be in a space of where you're both at peace, you're not at war with each other, you're not doing all of the back and forth, the bickering, and putting the child in the middle of trying to pick the side of, I want to be with mom, I want to be with dad, I want to do this and I want to do that. And that's truly not fair to the kid because they're like, I love you both.
Yeah, of course.
Choose, you know? And so your daughter, she's 17 when me and my ex-husband got went through our separation. Our oldest was 13, so 13, 7, and 5, I believe. So around in that area. Um, it was it was it was hard. I will
Mm,
um but I was at peace because I did a lot of crying and everything before I
yep,
finally had had enough. And it was like I was tired of hearing the same argument over and over again. And it's like you're not changing the behavior. So, like you were saying, the gaslighting in
yep,
the relationship, that's what it was. And it was the manipulation. And it's like, okay, if I'm complaining to you about something and then you try to you say you're sorry, you do a little bit to make it better, but as soon as you think that I've forgotten about the reason why I wanted you to change this behavior, you go back to
mm,
doing the same thing again. So it's like, am I really the crazy one in this situation? Or, and so that was what it was. And so it was like, yeah, it's best that we go our separate ways because it's not benefiting either one of us. And the major straw for me was he put our children